should be.
Oh, and so Mike's gonna hop on. I just let him know that we were taking the cases out of order, so he should be on in a minute.
What's the applicant's name?
There's an Edward Cannon raising his hand.
Okay, that is the attorney for this one. So I'm gonna promote him to a panelist. He's the attorney.
Great. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Edward Cannon on behalf of the property owner, Christy Goodrich. She has joined us tonight. If you could please elevate her, as well as her engineer, Paul DeSimone from Colonial Engineering, is here to answer questions as well. If it would be possible to elevate him as well, that would be appreciated. Thank you very much for your time tonight, for continuing this from the last meeting. This was filed as a request for a variance. That's still a part of the request for relief, but we believe it's also an existing non-conforming use because it has an existing front setback of 26.8 feet. And if I may, a little helpful overview, share my screen a bit here. Yes, okay. So can everyone see this okay? Is that working? Can everyone see this okay?
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. So here's 9 Ginley right here. Good picture of the house. You'll see directly behind it is Cobb's Pond, just to give you some bearing as to where we're located. Let's see, this will be helpful. So the existing home, which was built in 1969, is here. It's 26.8 feet back. So I was brought on not too long before the last hearing, so I wanted a chance to sort of examine the site. And when I determined that it's an existing non-conforming situation, we also think an appropriate form of relief would be either a finding under Chapter 48, Section 6, or a special permit under Section 9, 4A, to allow expansion of the non-conformity. And I have submitted a memo for the board's consideration when you deliberate. And if I may, I'll just sort of take you through some of the highlights of that to talk about the site a little bit. The applicant's proposing to construct a 24 by 24 garage. The setback of that would be 23.8 feet. There's an existing shed, as you can see in the front, that's approximately 12 feet. The distance isn't noted there, but it's around that. That is proposed to be removed, which would actually help the nonconformity. And where there's a deck now, or just in front of the deck, the garage would be connected to the house by a 12 by 12 foot section of house, which would be conforming. The property is located in the RB zoning district. It's a single family dwelling. The applicant has owned it since March 31st of 2000. The applicant tried to find some building department records of a building permit or occupancy permit from 1969, but was unsuccessful in locating those. And that goes to the nature of the nonconformity, whether it's a non-compliant situation with the 26.8 feet that exist or a non-conforming. I would suggest, because it's been in existence for over 50 years, it's been occupied as a single family home since that time, that it would be non-conforming as opposed to non-complying. I think the intent of the non-complying situation is for folks that sort of disregard the bylaws and go ahead and do what they want and then come ask for forgiveness or try to use that non-compliance to expand down the road. Here, clearly it's the main frame of the house that is non-conforming, and that's how it was constructed back in 1969. So respectfully, the applicant requests the board to issue a special permit under the town's bylaws, section 9(4)A. The board also has the flexibility to issue a finding under chapter 48, section 6, which provides that an existing nonconformity can be extended, altered, or changed, provided that it won't be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing nonconformity. So in this case, the existing nonconformity is the 26.8 feet, the shed, and so the shed will go away, and instead of 26.8 feet, it'll be 23.8 feet, so a difference of 3 feet. And I would suggest that that would not be substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. Of all the homes on Gidley Road, there is only one home that does not have a garage, and it happens to be 9 Gidley Road. 12 of the homes have 1-car garages, and 22 of the homes have 2-car garages. So what the applicant is proposing is really in keeping with what's happening in the neighborhood presently, and again would blend nicely with what's there. So yes, there's an expansion of the nonconformity, but I would suggest that it's not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing nonconformity, which is the standard for not only the statute, but also the town's bylaw to issue the special permit. If the board's not persuaded about the expansion of the nonconformity, the applicant did request a variance. I do think because of the topography of the lot, that a variance is appropriate if the board prefers that avenue of relief. And if I may, I'll just take the board briefly through the variance criteria. Has to be, as the board knows, one, owing to circumstances related to soil conditions, shape, or topography of the lot, but not affecting the general zoning district, which is the case here. The grade in the back of this lot drops off dramatically. Now, we don't have an elevation to show the board, but just behind that septic field, the grade really drops off substantially, almost straight down to wetlands and then out to the pond. The significance of that is it moves everything forward. So the septic field has to be situated there because it can't go back into the slope. And that's probably the reason why the house was moved a little bit closer to Gidley Road. And so that's, just the applicant can't really slide that garage back without getting into the septic field and having to move that. So that's a unique feature of the topography for this lot. The next criteria would be that a literal enforcement of the bylaw would involve substantial hardship. In this case, the applicant would have to move the septic field, which would be back towards the wetlands, down the slope, which would probably require some fill, which the Conservation Commission may not even grant. So that would add substantially to the cost of the project. And I believe that additional cost to the applicant would pose a substantial hardship and meet that criteria. And lastly, that relief can be granted that would not substantially harm the public good, but substantially derogate from the purpose of the bylaw. In this case, the purpose of the bylaw is to have some uniformity in the neighborhood, not have houses right on the road, primarily for safety reasons. So if a car were to drift off the road, it's not running into homes. In this case, the house sits up on a little bit of a rise. So if a car were to come off of Gidley Road, it's not likely to go up that rise and into the house. And so it is minimal relief, and I think it could be granted without substantially derogating from the intent of the bylaw. If I may indulge the board briefly, just a little bit longer, I just would like to take the board through just a look at the property. Picture's worth 1,000 words. So this is the front of the property. I'm standing on Ginley Road looking at the driveway, and you can see I'm 6'2", and I'm roughly, as I hold the camera up to my eye, roughly looking at the basement. So it gives you an idea of the elevation going up to the house. This would be the area where the proposed garage would be. You can see the existing deck. Again, just moving over a little bit, you can also see how it kind of humps up, and then you get some sense of how it goes back. It drops off in the back. Again, this is up in the driveway looking back. It is hard, I understand, to appreciate the change in elevation just on photographs, but hopefully you get some sense. That's the area where the septic system leach field is. And that's sort of looking just sort of back of that septic system right down into the marsh area, and then off towards you can see the pond a little bit in the distance there. This is on the other side of the house, in case there was some question as to the propriety of locating it on the other side of the house. It's really just not feasible with the chimney, with the elevation there. It's just would be, again, added cost to be able to try to make it work in that location. Eliminate the driveway on the other side, add a new driveway on this side. And so it's just, again, that's that same side. It's not quite, it's just a much more difficult project in that regard. So we respectfully request, for those reasons, that the board grant either of those avenues of relief for the applicant. I appreciate that very much.
Is John?
Where is John? I don't see him.
Let's see, John is not in here.
All right, I'll reach out.
Thank you. There he comes. There he is.
I don't know what happened. So, Attorney Cannon, I heard you finish up there. We also have the building inspector with us. Mike, do you want to make any comments on this?
I'll just lend my my review of this. So, Attorney Cannon did a fantastic job summarizing the possible relief. This is a typical Gala Diedrich case, pre-existing non-conforming. And one thing I'll just add to is Attorney Cannon alluded to non-compliant, which in 2018 was somewhat removed from 48. Non-compliant was the 6 and 10 year statute of limitations on pre-existing zoning violations. And in 2018, the legislature actually acted on 48 and moved that to Section 6. So even if this was a non-compliant structure, it now affords the protection of 48 Section 6 as being non-conforming if it meets those criteria of the 6 and 10 year statute of limitations. So, this is, typical 48 Section 6 finding, and or if the board finds necessary, a special permit, as well as a finding of, no substantial detriment. So we have no objection to the request. And again, I think Attorney Cannon did a good job explaining the relief at hand. So that's all we have.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any board members with questions or comments on this? Yeah, this is Bob. I just think in terms of the avenue of relief, I think it does fall squarely within Section 9(4)(a) in that, and it would require a special permit because it's a extension of the first part of that section deals with extensions in any direction other than the direction in which there is a non-conformity. So that would not apply, but the second part seems to me would apply, that we could grant this as a special permit, provided that we find that it will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. And so I guess in my view, I would proceed to treat this under that standard as opposed to the variance.
Yeah, I agree. I think that makes sense for a special permit on this.
Yep.
So, are there any neighbors that want to comment on this? I know a letter was submitted with a number of signatures from the neighbors saying they weren't, they were okay with this project, but are there any neighbors that want to comment on this?
If there are any neighbors, if you want to just raise your hand or type your name into the chat, and Amy will give you permission to speak.
Okay.
So I'm not seeing anyone raising their hand or entering anything into the chat.
Okay. So could I have a motion to approve
John, I
this?
think we should probably amend the application, should we not?
I don't think it's necessary because when you request a variance, that is a higher level as opposed to the special permit.
Okay.
But I'll just ask.
Okay.
Well, actually, Mike, you help people with the advertising and the request. What's your thought on that?
As long as they're requesting the variance, it's at the, jurisdiction of the board to then decide whether or not this case qualifies for the special permit or just a finding. So that's the discretion of the board. And as you said, Mr. Chairman, I think you stated it correctly, is that the variance is the higher standard. It was advertised for the relief. The relief itself and what type of relief really doesn't have to be advertised. It's the section of relief and what they're requesting the relief from. So then again, it's up to the board to decide what type of relief is necessary for that particular citation. So I think you're correct.
Okay, so I think we're okay with that. And let's see. Attorney Cannon, do you want to close the hearing?
That would be terrific. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. At this time, this is just a vote to close the hearing, and it has to be a roll call vote. Could I have a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Moved by Suzanne, second by Jane, just to close the hearing. All those in favor of closing the hearing, please say aye. Drew Delaney.
Aye.
Suzanne Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Bob Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Jane Coffey.
Aye.
And I'm John Lee, aye. Okay, so the hearing is closed. Now, could I have a motion to approve a special permit under 9.4A and with the added comment in there that this is recognized as not being substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood?
So moved.
Moved by Suzanne. Second by Jane. Any further discussion on this? Bob, do you think we need to add anything else?
Well, just in terms of our findings in support of that conclusion, in my view anyway, and I don't know what the sense of the board is, but it's a fairly small enlargement toward the street, and also the neighborhood does consist of homes with garages on the side, so it is consistent in architecture and nature with the rest of the neighborhood. And I don't think, given that there's obviously no impact on traffic or anything like that, so I think there's an ample basis to find that it's not substantially more detrimental than the current condition.
Okay, good. So we can put that into the condition. Drew, do you have something?
Was there other board's comments that should be stipulated in the conditioned into the? I know conservation had mentioned something about making sure there was erosion control.
Never got anything myself.
I'm looking at the package that we received. I didn't think. Let's see. Is there something from does somebody see that condition from conservation? There we go.
I'm looking.
I've got it here.
So that was taken care of.
Yep, it
Okay.
Yep, good call, Drew. It says, plan showing wetland boundaries was submitted. Okay, so
Perfect.
they're good. Nope. So, no, all the departments were good with this on their, in the latest letter that we have. Okay, so we have the, it's been seconded. Any final comments? Okay. Okay, at this time, roll call vote. Drew Delaney,
Aye.
Suzanne Murphy,
Murphy, aye.
Bob Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Jane Coffey, and I'm John Lee, aye. Okay.
Thank you all very much. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Thank
Okay,
you
good
very
luck.
much.
Same to you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck with the project.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Moving on, the next case we have is also a continuation. It's case number 2032, 524 Elm Road. This is a variance request under section 94A of the zoning bylaws to allow a 20 by 32 attached garage with a side yard setback of 5.8 feet, where 25 side yard setback is required. Okay. Do we have the applicant, Mr. Brady? Good evening.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, Thomas Brady on behalf of Lisa Tierney, the owner of 524 Elm Road in Walpole. We were before your board on October 7th, and we had some discussion regarding the request for a variance to construct a 20 by 34 garage to the, looking at it to the right side of the home. And we've continued it to today. So that we can prove that we met the requirements for the variance. And as your board knows, and as I said, 524 Elm Street is in a rural area of Walpole. This lot is 16,940 square feet. It's a 79.5 feet of frontage with a deep lot. So it's a narrow lot in a rural zone. And the house was erected back in the 40s, I believe. So it's a pre-existing non-conforming house. It is similar in that what Mr. Cannon just talked about with the non-conforming, but the building inspector has determined that I need a variance. It's not a special permit. When I went and talked to him regarding section 9.4, I guess this was a different scenario than what Mr. Cannon presented you. So I'm going forward with this and proving my case that a variance is allowed in this area with the approval of your board. So the narrow shape of the lot specifically affects the existing structure, but does not generally affect the zoning district it is located. In the back of this, there's an in-ground swimming pool with a concrete slab around it. Directly behind the house is a septic system. So in order for Ms. Tierney to just meet the zoning requirements, she would have two options: to attach the garage directly to the back of the house. She'd meet all the setback requirements. The problem with that, she can't put it on top of a septic system. She'd have to move the septic system, which would be a financial hardship. And she would have to cut away some of the concrete from the pool. She would meet the setback requirements in doing that, and she would be able to have the garage attached to the house, which she wants to have, but she'd still have to redo the whole inside of her house, another financial. The other alternative was to put an accessory building way out in the back that would meet all the requirements of the zoning, and she wouldn't have to come before your board. But the problem with that, there'd be a long driveway. Now, she is elderly. She has two older parents that are in their 80s that will be living with her. So she wants it so she can drive into the garage, take their parents out of the car, and there'll be a ramp inside the garage to get to the main access of the house. And by putting the garage where she has it, it'll be able to access the house easily, and she won't have to do any big reconfigurations of the inside of the house. Now, the hardships that she has with this lot and where she can possibly put the garage by right is, again, the septic system, the cement, and then she'll put a long driveway. Now, there's also a hardship that she has. The courts in Massachusetts, is a 2016 case, and I provided that case law to you, says that a safety hazard is a hardship. And I would present to you that the safety of her elderly parents and herself in trying to get her parents into the house in a snowstorm or an ice storm without bringing them inside the garage and having them come in safely is a safety concern, and that represents a hardship. And again, I provided that case. It's Furlong versus Zoning Board of Appeals of Salem. Again, the hardship, which is financial to her as well as safety, would allow your board to grant this variance. So in the Furlong case, it was basically this marina could build their building as it's set within the setbacks, but they wanted to put it closer within the setback area. And their hardship was it was a safety concern with the shape of the lot, because they had a big boat thing moving boats around. And if it wasn't put into the setback, the safety for the customers coming in would be affected. There's also a Brookline case where they allowed a hardship for safety in that the loading ramp, it had to be a certain height. So they were able to lessen that for the safety of workers coming in and out. So I would suggest that the safety hazard here is true, and it meets the standard of the hardship. So she has two hardships here: financial, in that by putting the garage in a place that meets all the zoning requirements causes her a financial hardship, and the safety hardship of, just parking outside and not being able to get her parents and herself in the house safely, so slipping and fall. Your board also, in 2018, very similar case, excuse me, it was on Maryland's Way, and I believe, let me see, Miss Murphy and Miss Coffey were on the board at this time, but Maryland's Way was similar. You granted a variance, and the hardship was financial because if they had to put their garage in an area that would make them reconfigure their house, then that was a financial hardship to them. It was you and Christy Deary, 20 Maryland's Way. It was case 1018. And again, your board unanimously voted to grant that variance. So the other two tiers that must be met, they have to make all of them, is desirable relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good. And the placement of this garage has been looked at by all the neighbors, and they are 100% behind it, and I provided you with that. So the public as a whole and the neighborhood are all for it, so it's not a detriment to the public good. And the last section, a desirable relief may be granted without nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent and purpose of the bylaw. And again, the purpose of the bylaw is so that the neighborhood is safe and that the neighbors are all happy with the neighborhood. And by providing those letters of support, I feel that Ms. Turney has met her requirements for your board to grant a variance, especially when you have precedence by your board in other matters where variances have been granted for financial reasons. But again, she has a financial hardship as well as a safety hardship. So with that, I would request that your board grant a variance for Ms. Turney to be able to construct her garage. She is also, when I talked to her builder, they're willing to to only make the garage width 16 feet as opposed to 20. So if that would help your board in making a favorable decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Brady. Let's see, we still have the building inspector with us, so Mr. Yanovich, do you have any comments on this? Because last time your name was mentioned at the hearing, and now that we have you here, I'd like your direct input.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Mike Yanovich, Building Commissioner with the Town of Walpole. So this is definitively a 40A Section 10 argument. We won't opine as to whether or not this proposal meets 40A Section 10, but this is a 40A Section 10, and it's up to the board to decide whether or not this proposal meets, the criteria that the statute sets forth under 40A Section 10. So, unfortunately, there's no precedent for a variance. Each case is taken on its face. And we've had a long history with this proposal, and here we are. So we won't opine again as to whether or not we believe it meets it, but we know that it needs a variance as 40A Section 10 lays out.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your input. Board members, do you have any questions for the applicant or the applicant's attorney? Any members of the public that want to speak on this?
I had some questions, John. Sorry, I wasn't
Sure.
quick enough on the update.
Okay. Go ahead.
I just wanted to appreciate Mr. Brady's discussion there. I just wanted to ask about the safety hardship. It looked like the holding in that case was designed to address a situation where there was an existing hazard that you were trying to avoid by your non-compliance, as opposed to, well, I guess that's one thing. Or if you were to comply with the bylaw, you would be creating a risk of harm that's greater than if you were granted the variance. And so I'm just trying to understand in this case sort of what the existing harm, what safety risk is.
Okay.
And how that risk, and then I guess the balancing between the risk associated with complying with it, the safety risk associated with that, and then the lesser safety risk associated with the variance.
Okay, so if we were to comply with all zoning, and in two ways, one by attaching the house to the back of the house, and again, we wouldn't be able to reconfigure that, so it would be a separate attached garage. So my client would have to bring her elderly parents in a wheelchair and a walker on a driveway, into a ramp, into a house, and again, in the winter and ice storms, snowstorms, that's a hazard. Same thing if they were to put an accessory building way out back with a long driveway, that's a hazard, them walking that far. And again, so with granting the variance to relieve that hazard would allow them to pull into the garage, push a wheelchair up a ramp, and access into the house. So there is the safety hazard that we're trying to alleviate.
I believe I saw in the notes in the discussion, perhaps from the building inspector, that the existing garage on the house was closed off or something. I don't quite understand the facts there. Could you explain that a little bit?
It was underneath the house. It's kind of like a basement garage when you're looking at it.
Okay.
So it's would be coming upstairs from a basement. It's not on the same first floor level.
So one of the things I think that's gone on here is that the house has undergone a renovation, and the garage was not part of the original renovation, and now this is being added on, which, basically the house was redone, and now we're here, and it wasn't done all as one project, and that's.
Well, Mr. Lee, if I can just correct you on that.
Okay.
So the plans I submitted, so when the builder went to the building inspector, the frontage where they put the porch and the extra building, that was already non-conforming. So he could get a building permit to construct those two structures without obtaining a variance or a special permit. But the side of the house complied with zoning. And once you went into that side yard, at that point, you need a variance. And Mike, you correct me if I'm wrong, kind of that's the discussion we had.
I'll try to keep the discussion narrow, but
Okay.
yeah, the extension into the side yard is what triggered the variance. There were actually no permits when this construction started. This project was subject to 3 stop work orders, and the entire addition was built without a building permit. And then when we finally got the building permit, that's when we said, okay, your side garage is going to require relief by way of a variance. So that's when the discussion came up with the homeowner and the contractor or carpenter, I'll say, as to the fact that the garage addition required a variance.
Okay, so thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Brady and Mr. Yanovich, for the details on that. Okay, do any other board members have any questions?
I have a quick one.
Sure.
They're saying they have to have a garage now when they already had a garage. That's the part I kind of don't understand. If you needed a garage, you had one.
No, the garage was in the basement.
I got one in my basement. Works great.
Yeah,
I got
but we're doing it again for elderly parents, so they come in on one floor. We don't want to put an elevator into the home.
Okay, my next door neighbor has one, and they got one of those things that shoot you up the stairs. They work fine.
Right. Again, in 2018, you voted positively for a variance very similar on Maryland's Way.
Okay,
I
Jane.
have a question.
Oh,
All set.
Jane, you're on mute.
Can't hear you.
Bottom left, take yourself off mute, Jane. Little microphone down there.
Amy can do it for you as well.
Amy, help Jane unmute. Thank you.
Let me just find her. People keep moving in this thing.
Her granddaughter probably has finals.
I have a question while we wait, if that's all right, Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Is this garage already built?
No, it is not.
Okay.
How do I unmute her?
So you should be able to go, if you hover over her rectangle, it should say, an option should pop up that says unmute in the upper right hand.
It says ask to unmute, and I'm like pressing it, but it's not.
Oh, wait, there she is. Good.
No, she's still muted. Oh, no, she's not. She's good now.
Nope.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm unmuted now. Okay, thank you.
We love
It's
kids.
just a couple of comments that I want to make about this, because I'm certainly cognizant of the hardship this is with somebody in a wheelchair. One of my parents was in such a situation. But there are a couple of thoughts I had about this, and that's, first off, they did get rid of the garage and made considerable adjustments to this home without any building permit. Putting that aside, once they had the building permit, then they raised the question of the garage. And if I'm understanding Mike Yanovich, he led them to believe that, okay, you've gone and done this, so now you have to get a variance. Well, here's how I feel about that. First of all, the bar for a variance, as you well know, is very high. Secondly, in order for a variance, for a hardship, it cannot be because of a person or people. There has to be something far beyond that. So while I feel very badly for this lady, I feel, number one, that she should have had a building permit, and then she would have been aware of what the situation was. Secondly, there are many, many people who are in wheelchairs who don't have a garage, or if they do have a garage, maybe don't have access straight to such a thing as a covered ramp. And thirdly, with regard to the Maryland's Way, as I recall, and I'm not positive, but this woman hadn't made any renovations to her house whatsoever. She was coming before the board with a hardship financial because she was going to have to make a lot of rent, was going to have to put out some money. That to me is a little different. If somebody comes before you, before they've made the renovations, that's one thing. But this petitioner did a lot of work on her house, and then after the fact, just assumes some way she's going to be able to put a garage on. And while it's a hardship, yes, is it a hardship that meets the bar for a variance for the town of Walpole? And I don't really think it does.
Well, again, if I may, I'm going to go back to that Maryland's Way. There's some variances that were allowed on Maud Terrace. And if they...
Did any of those remove garages, Tommy? Did any of those?
No, basically they added a screen. They added a screen porch. But again, I think you're getting carried away. I know you're upset that they did this building because of not having building permits. Yes, that was wrong. Okay.
Attorney Brady.
Yes.
Nobody's upset tonight. Okay.
No one's upset. No, we got the holidays coming. Okay, so we're not upset. But we're here for the variance. I have to meet the requirements of the variance. So in order to do that, I got to say, Mrs. Coffey, okay, I can put the garage in the back of the house, and I meet all the zoning requirements. I can design it. I can bring it to Mike. He can give me the building permit. I can put it in an accessory building in the back. I meet all the requirements. But I have a hardship. Hardship is what? Well, if I attach it to the back of the house, I got my septic system. And I got to move that septic system. That's going to cost me a lot of money. And I want to be able to have my parents access directly from the garage. Well, if I put it in the back of the house, guess what? I got to rearrange the whole inside of my house, financial. All right? If I put the building in the back, I got a long driveway, more money. I have a safety hazard. My parents are going to have to walk all the way in from there, in the snow, in the rain, slip and fall. Okay, so with that hardship, with the shape of the lot being narrow, I can't make my garage comply. So I have to find the next best thing and request your permission. So the next best thing is to put it to the side of the house so we can get in, keep everybody safe, and keep my financial in order. And I have all the neighbors agreeing. Now that's the best argument I can make. That's the only argument I can make. I know that your board has done it in the past. If things have changed, I just know there's decisions out there that variances were granted for similar circumstances. So again, I realize that this came to you and the building inspector was not happy, not upset, that the carpenter started building without getting his permits. But here's the situation we're in. I'm here for a variance. I believe I've met the requirements of hardship, topography of the lot, meeting the public needs, and appeasing all of the neighbors who want this garage for their neighbor, Ms. Tierney. Can't argue anything more.
Okay, I think you've made the best case possible, Attorney Brady, and I'll ask you now if you want to close the hearing.
Yes, I'd like to close the hearing.
Okay, The applicant requests to close the hearing. Could I have a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Moved by Suzanne,
Second.
second by Jane. Any further discussion on, this is just closing the hearing. Okay, roll call vote to close the hearing. Suzanne Murphy,
Murphy, aye.
Jane Coffey,
Aye.
Drew Delaney,
Aye.
and Bob Fitzgerald.
Aye.
I'm John Lee, aye. Okay, it is closed. So, at this point, what I'd like to do is just put out, this is a variance request under section 94A of the zoning bylaws. And could I have a motion to approve the applicant's request?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Suzanne. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jane. Any further discussion on this? So one of the things, just procedurally, if you are in favor of granting this, you will vote aye. If you are opposed to granting this relief, you will vote no. So.
So just further discussion on the motion?
Sure, yeah.
So I think in terms of the safety issue, I'm not certain that it meets the standard that's laid out in that case. I don't think that there's an existing safety issue that's being addressed. I think it's in that case, I think it had more to do with the fact that even before the variance was granted, there was, a risk to property in the area due to the movement of boats and things like that. So my thought on, I'm a little torn on the financial piece of it, only because, and the practicality of it, because in looking at the lot itself, it is narrow, and the existing structure, even before it was modified, would not admit of a garage to the left-hand side of the lot, because it's just there's not enough space there. And secondly, there's an existing pool behind. So were the garage to be placed behind the building, presumably the driveway would have to then, go over where the existing pool is located. I understand that that's a financial hardship to come into compliance given those obstacles, but I don't know. I do struggle with this idea that, and we've run into this in the past, and we have other precedent that the board is aware of about folks sort of creating a problem for themselves and then coming and asking us for relief sort of after the fact, and puts the board in a very difficult position. And there are cases where we've denied variances in that circumstance. So I don't know if it would benefit from just further discussion from board members of what they feel about sort of the financial hardship argument, given the fact that the building is where it is and the pool is where it is, adding a garage somewhere, and perhaps the garage could be reopened in the basement. Maybe that's an option. But anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there and see if the board would like further discussion on that point.
My discussion on that is there was a garage. And they removed it.
Totally get that. I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page before.
And I think that, as we know, this board works very hard to find a way to work with people, but sometimes I just find it, it's, this one is, I'm having a hard time figuring out how to justify a variance for this. And I think Attorney Brady did the best job he could on some of this. The safety aspects, I don't think that he brought in an interesting case in a commercial boatyard, but I don't think that really applies to a residential property like this. So, that's where I'm coming down on this. Okay. Any other board members' comments? Okay. So as I said before, it'd be a roll call vote, and aye is to approve the variance, and no is to deny the request for variance. Okay, everybody ready to vote? Okay, Suzanne Murphy.
Murphy, no.
Bob Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Okay, Jane Coffey.
No.
Drew Delaney.
No.
And I'm John Lee, no. Okay, so it does not pass. Okay. Okay.
Thank you all very much for your time. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Tommy. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Stay safe. All right, thank you, guys.
Thanks. Bye. Okay. Next case we have this evening is a new one for us. This is case number 2031-210 Route 1, special permit under section 5B4E of the zoning bylaws to allow a change of use for car sales, and special permit under section 5B4DD of the zoning bylaws to allow a change in use for automobile repair. Okay, do we have the applicant or the applicant's attorney with us this evening?
Applicants here.
Okay. Okay, and Alexander, good to see you. And do you have an attorney with you this evening?
Supposed to be, yes.
Okay.
What is his name?
Sean?
McCormick?
Yes.
Okay. There you go.
Good.
Okay, so Alexander or Sean, you guys can start up and explain what you're proposing for this site, and we all have the information either in hard copy or on the computer, so we can pull up the plans or anything else that you're going to reference.
All right, I'm going to present, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Sean McCormick. Alex has brought me in to sort of help get this project off the ground. So what we're proposing here is to basically take the empty building at 2210 Route 1 and turn it into a car dealership, a used car dealership. So the business model is basically to get cars, bring them into the garage in the back, and turn them around for sale. It's a business that I think is going to fit in well with the area. You know, it's located on a stretch of Route 1 that's in the Highway Business District. It's sort of across the street from the truck dealer. There's the motorcycle and small engine shop a little down the street. So I think that it's a business that is going to be consistent and compatible with the neighborhood. You have my narrative, and I appreciate that. I did get that in later than I wanted. I appreciate the accommodation on that. What I think I wanted to start with, unless I get any direction from the board, is the parking area. The parking area is where we have a non-conformance. Otherwise, it's a conforming lot. It's a conforming structure. So the parking actually has more parking than is allowed under the calculations. There's a provision in the bylaw that allows specifically for a pre-existing non-conforming parking area to continue its excess parking. So we would just ask that we be granted that dispensation. And if you have the proposed parking plan in front of you. If it makes sense to share screen, I'm happy to do that. But if you just want to look at the copies you have, that's fine too. You'll just notice that in the front on the Route 1 side, some of the parking is within it's a 50-foot setback. It's set 30 feet back from Route 1. The language of the bylaw is sort of like a soft setback on this. There's a section that says, look, the board can authorize parking in the otherwise applicable setback in the highway business district. So here again, we would ask for that authorization, and like I said, it's set about 30 feet back when the preference is 50. So it's not right up against the highway by any means.
I do have the plan in front of me on my computer, but can you share that so everybody else can see it so we know exactly what you're talking about? I also think we should talk about the number of parking spots and the fact that some of them are right up to the property line.
Yeah, great. So the try to use some of the tech here. So the parking spots that are within the 50 feet are here and these two. And again, the bylaw allows a dispensation for that parking within the 50 feet. Here you have the building is set back much more than current front yard requires. I think that the trend is to pull the buildings a bit closer and have parking in the back. But this is, it's an older building. It is. I don't want to say it's pre-existing non-conforming because the building is conforming. The parking lot is non-conforming. So the other, I guess the other aspect is in the rear of the property here to here. You have proposed parking that is set right up against the lot line. Now, again, one of the things we're trying to do is keep the parking in the existing pavement. So the parking is all proposed to be on existing asphalt surfaces, and there's not at the moment any proposal to expand the asphalt. So we had I think a little bit of a tough time trying to fit in the parking that we thought we would need for the business within the existing pavement, and I think I think it does actually a relatively good job with doing that, with maximizing the setbacks where possible, and staying on the pavement and not increasing impervious.
I just ask a quick question, John.
Go ahead, Bob.
While we're on the subject of the number of parking spaces, can you explain sort of what the previous use was for, and what the parking requirement is for the proposed use, and how many spaces are in excess of what's required?
So and I'm gonna unshare the screen, or I'll leave that up. So the last use was a retail use. Now the bylaw actually has a very small allowance for a car dealership. It's classified as a category 4 under the bylaw, and so it's got about double what would be required under the classification 4.
So we're talking about, I don't know, 50 or 60 spaces where 30 would be required. Is that about right? I'm just trying to get a sense.
I don't have the exact calculation, but that's about right. It's 56 proposed, and yeah, it was about 30 under number 4 for the size building we have.
Okay, one of the things, there's been a number of issues that have been brought up from comments from town boards, and this is the first night of opening the hearing. I think that the applicant should take a look at some of them. I have some questions. Is this on a septic system or town sewer?
This is Title 5 at the moment.
Okay. And as you know, it's in the it's in the aquifer recharge area or a potential water source for the town of Walpole. I looked at the map today. I wasn't exactly sure which one, but either one, there'd be some, restrictions that the zoning board would put on as far as, fuel handling, chemicals use at the site, and also even the parking as far as parking of vehicles in this area. Also, are repairs going to take place inside the building? Is that part of the plan?
So yes, that is part of the plan. If you look in the back, in this area here, would be an entrance to a garage. Now the site slopes from Route 1 towards Sunset, so you actually have at the front of the building, it's about 14 feet as the zoning definition of height. It's actually about 12 feet if you measure from just the earth. In the back, it actually presents as almost 2 stories because of the slope. So you would have the entrance to the garage back there.
Okay, and right now, is that paved back there?
So the paved area is shown, it ends here. Now there's some sort of old, sort of dilapidated pavement in this area, but this area here is unpaved at the moment.
Okay. So I think that's the kind of thing that's going to have to be shown in the plan, how vehicles are going to access in, with the drainages for this area. Because like I said, this is in the water's recharge area or a potential water source for the town. So I think there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done on that to show that this can be done in a method that's going to be safe for everybody.
So one of the concerns we had, and look, this is a really practical concern on our end, is that at the moment the applicant is not the owner of the property, and what we were trying to sort of accomplish is to see whether the change of use in the parking layout is something that's gonna pass muster before engaging in the engineering work that we would need to do to address some of the drainage issues and the petroleum issues. So I appreciate the concern, and it's definitely something that is on our radar. But just the sort of honest, practical answer is that we were sort of trying to back end that kind of expense because at the moment it's still a contingent sale, and Mr. Ponomarenko isn't the owner and isn't has sort of limitations to the type of site testing and engineering work that we can get started on.
Okay, and I'm only going to speak for myself on this. I already identified concerns about parking right up to the property line for the abutter, and I don't know exactly who the abutter is, but anytime you're parking right up to the property line. That raises concerns. We did approve with conditions another car dealership, and the vehicles had to be kept back from the highway setback because of concerns of sightline views and things like that, and also just the view of the property. So I think you should take a look at that case that we approved within the past year or so. And I understand where your applicant's coming from as far as not wanting to go into the details, but that's what the zoning board is going to be looking for, I think, is the details on the engineering of this and how it's all going to be configured. So what I see here is just a very preliminary start to your project. Do other board members have any comments or want to add anything to that or disagree?
I would just,
Go ahead, Bob.
No, I would just add, I guess I haven't to think about it more about the parking, but it seems to me that if the amount of parking that's proposed is twice the maximum that would otherwise be permitted, it just raises questions. If we want some parking moved out of that 50-foot setback and reduce the number of parking spaces, could we have a configuration that might lend itself to more a better circulation on the site and not have spaces either so close to the property line or move them back off of the Route 1 for additional safety purposes? That's just my initial impressions of it.
John?
Go ahead, Jane.
I'm in agreement with John. I think this is a very, very preliminary, sketchy plan that we have. And I think that you're 100% right because of the water recharge, the idea of the double of the parking, not to mention that the work needs to be done on parking in the back. And I guess I have overall concerns. I share with you that this is very preliminary, and I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be able to make a reasonable decision one way or the other at this point.
Okay, thank you, Jane. For the applicant, I'll also add, I don't think I hope you're not feeling that the zoning board is opposed to something going in there. I don't think that's the case. I think what it is, we just need a lot more details on this. Suzanne Murphy?
Is there a reason that they may have to go before conservation in the back? You can't really tell by this plan at all.
No, I don't think we're near a buffer zone. I mean, I don't believe that we're near a buffer zone.
But you don't know.
There's I mean, I don't want to say definitively because I'm not positive, but I'm like 90%. There's I'll leave it at that.
You're going to have to do more. I drove around the parking lot. The pavement's not in good shape. It's going to need to be paved. And I just don't know how much impervious cover you can have up here when it's a recharge area. That's all. I'm all set.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Attorney McCormick, I think there's already been comments submitted from the town engineer and town boards. I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look at those, but I think that would probably be something that you'd want to take a look at so you can move forward and start addressing some of those issues on this and some of the concerns you've just heard from the zoning board this evening. Do you have any questions, or are you looking for more direction at this point, or what do you?
No. I understand. I appreciate the board's position on this. I think at this point we would ask for a continuance to the next available meeting date and allow us to regroup with our engineer and see if we can address some of these concerns.
I I think that's a good idea. Amy, what do we have that's going to give them time? I'm even thinking, Attorney McCormick, would you be looking at, January sometime, or are you under a time crunch for your client?
Well, I mean, we are under a time crunch, but nothing is so unmovable that I mean, if it were possible to get in December, I think that we could move with some due speed and get done what we need to get done. If January is the date, I mean, then we would take the January date.
Okay, Amy, what do we have in early January?
I know Gabe sent you guys a email a while back of possible dates for the 2021 year. Let me see if I can find them.
What's the first Wednesday?
Yeah, do you want to?
Yes. Yeah, let's go with that.
All right, so that would be
6th.
January 6th. Yeah.
Okay. Attorney McCormick, do you want to continue this until January 6th, and that gives you time to address many of these issues and make some progress on this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At the request of the applicant, this will be continued until January 6th, 7:00 p.m. No further notice will be given.
Can I just add my comment?
Sure.
I would need to talk to the seller, because I think the seller is really rash to sell this, and it's been in the process for the last 6 months. So looks like it's not gonna go through. It looks like it's not gonna happen. So I would need to talk to before you guys schedule something. I would need to talk to the seller just to make sure we have some time, because for me it looks like it's gonna be for me, I think it's not even gonna be done in January, because we have so many open questions, and I think the seller is not gonna accept to wait that long. I already extended 3 times this transaction. I don't think we can wait that long. So I would need to talk to the seller before we can schedule something for the next meeting.
Alex, and I guess one of the limitations of doing this by Zoom is that I can't pass you notes. I would suggest that you get on the agenda, and if you need to withdraw the application, do that. But at this point, I would suggest getting on the agenda.
Okay, this is something that we need to decide like immediately, or we can decide maybe like in a couple days.
No, this is this is now, and what we're looking at continuing until January, or Amy, I know what's going on in December. What do we have available?
Not much.
We're crammed. We have a lot going on. It's a lot.
Okay.
I guess, John, if I could just point out to the applicant that just because the reason we're holding this open is just so that if you want to come back and present and move forward, you can. But if you choose not to, that's fine too. Or if you need more time at that point, you could ask us for another continuance beyond the January date. So that nothing is binding on you if you choose to continue.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So what I would, Amy, you said January 6th is the available date?
Yep. I mean, December 16th, we have a 40A meeting. It would be a lot. but
No, and also there's a lot of work that needs to be done between now and the next time we meet on the part of the applicant for the questions that we have. So I think January 6th, that works for the zoning board, and I think it also can work for the applicant. And the applicant has already requested to continue the hearing. So now it's just a question of when. So if we can continue it out until January 6th, I think that gives everybody time to get done what they need to get done. Okay, could I have a motion to continue until January 6th?
So moved.
Moved by Suzanne.
Second.
Second by Jane. Any further discussion on just continuing the hearing? Okay. Okay, roll call vote for this. Suzanne Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Bob Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Jane Coffey.
Aye.
Drew Delaney.
Aye.
Dave Anderson.
Aye.
I'm John Lee, aye. So this is continued out until January 6th.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Okay, next we have, going to the top of the agenda, case number 2021, Wall Street Development Corporation, 48 Burns Ave. And this is a request for project change amendment to a comprehensive permit under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B, to amend the project to include Brook Lane for 40 units in 8 buildings instead of previously approved 32 units in 6 buildings, and utility connections from Brook Lane to eliminate installation of utilities from Union Street. Okay.
Is that a motion to open, John?
Yes, that is a motion. I'm opening this hearing. It's a new hearing that we're having, and it is was advertised as a new hearing. I talked to town council or emailed with town council. This is a new hearing that's moving forward at this point. Okay. Let's see. Do we have? Hey, George, you're there. I just want to make sure that we're doing this correctly, opening it as a new hearing.
Correct. This is a public hearing on the notice of project change.
Okay. Very good. Okay. So if what I'd like to do is have the applicant explain what's being proposed, and Mr. Petrosi, I see you're here with us this evening. So if you want to walk us through the changes that you have are proposing for this.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since the board approved the comprehensive permit, we've tried to address some of the concerns that were raised during the public hearing process. And we've reached an agreement to acquire a parcel of land off of Brook Lane to provide a safer and more convenient access or two-way access into the proposed development. And under this proposal, the access drive for the project would have an entrance and an exit from Burns Avenue and from Brook Lane. As the board might recall, that previously this was a single access drive with a cul-de-sac from Burns Avenue. There was a significant amount of concern raised over the length of that proposed drive. So we took it upon ourselves to do a couple of things to address that concern by acquiring this property, and also to address some concerns that were raised by the Conservation Commission regarding the installation of water and sewer utilities along the Pickerel Brook. So essentially the plan calls for a through access drive from Burns Avenue to Brook Lane. And we've added 8 additional units to the project, but it should be kept in mind that the size of the units that we're proposing are different from the previous plan that was approved. if we had used the same footprint from
Yeah.
the
Listen to Lou.
previous plan, we would
Get
have
him
been able
finest.
to put 56 units.
Finest. Did he graduate?
Jane and other board members, if you would just go to mute if, as Mr. Petrosi's talking. I'm just hearing some background talk. So Suzanne, Jane, let's go to mute.
Can I just point something out? The applicant, we have new members. So
I'm trying to explain the project change. And
we have members that don't know the old project.
well, I'm trying to give a little background information on that, Susan. So, you know, I understand there's new members, and I'm trying to express the concerns that were raised during the previous meeting, the project and how it was designed and what the concerns were. So we've tried to address those concerns. And I'm trying to also explain that if we had also used the footprint of the buildings that we proposed under the prior approval, we could have essentially put 56 or 60 units in this project with the same size building. So we're not, you know, as some people might say, we're not trying to exploit this situation by expanding the project. What we're trying to do is provide a better project that addresses the concerns that were raised during the hearing process. And hopefully that results in a more amenable project for everybody concerned. And by having this dual entry and access for the project, it alleviates some traffic or impacts to the Burns Avenue neighborhood, but it also adds some impact to the Brook Lane side of the project. So we're trying to do the best we can with what we have for the site without overburdening the site. And as town council might advise, is that, you know, we're, as part of this hearing process, we're only discussing the proposed changes from the original project. We're not revisiting the entire project. We're simply talking about the changes in the project that we've proposed, which in this particular instance is particularly related to the second means of access and the 8 additional units to the project. I have with me tonight Rob Truax, who can review the engineering questions or details that you might have. And I also have Bill Scully from Green International, who can also discuss traffic and potential impacts on resulting from the 8 additional units and the access onto Brook Lane to Union Street. So that's where we are at this point. But I think overall, this design is much more in tune with what the board had previously wanted in terms of access and safety and public safety and fire apparatus. We're just adding 8 additional units to sort of make the project feasible for the additional land that we're acquiring. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I turn it over to you if you'd like to have Mr. Truax or Mr. Scully speak. That would be your choice.
Okay, so thank you for the introduction of the project. I have the plan up right in front of me on the computer. The units near Burns Ave, are those exactly as are those changing at all, or they look different from what we approved? Is it a different style of configuration, or what's going on?
The actual size of the units, the width of the units has increased. I think previously the units were 16 or 18 feet wide, and these are 22. I don't remember the exact dimensions, but they are a little bit wider units. They're, as I mentioned, if we used the previous units, I wasn't particularly fond of them, but that building type that was approved would have allowed us to construct more units within the development. So we've tempered that down a bit, made for a more aesthetically pleasing and more livable unit, and increasing the project very nominally from the previous project. Keeping in mind that, you know, the original project that was proposed for Burns Avenue was 36 units. We reduced it by 4 units during the hearing process. So essentially we're only increasing this density by 4 units compared to what was originally proposed. And we're adding a significant improvement with the second means of access and eliminating a lot of utility work along the areas that were related to the Conservation Commission concerns.
Okay, well, I still think there's going to be a lot of questions as far as the size of the units, and I'm looking at the plan, and it's definitely recognized by the board that this is a major modification of the plan. Good things such as the access, but there's other changes that are going to need to be addressed. So that being said, why don't we just go to your engineer, Rob, if you want to explain some of the changes that have been done on this and where you stand on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rob Truax from GLM Engineering. I'm going to share my screen so I can pull up the plan so everyone can see it. Okay, I'm assuming everyone can see that, the color up on my screen. So, as Mr. Petrozzi said, so the project has changed in the sense that we now have 2 access points. One is off Burns Ave, and the second being off Brook Lane. The positive of that is obviously traffic flow through the site. We had a dead-end street before coming into the site. The other thing that changes that is really from an environmental standpoint is, if you recall, we had the water and sewer looping out to Union Street, and it went down through this narrow strip, this dark green area, along what's called, I believe we call it Trap Hole Brook, or I forget the actual name of that brook. And it was very close to the brook, and there were a lot of concerns about that being built and possibly having disturbance to that area. So that's been changed. There's no utilities going through there. The utilities will loop out to Brook Lane. There's a sewer manhole in the cul-de-sac of Brook Lane, which we can tie into. There's a existing water line that comes up from Union Street to the end of Brook Lane. I will point out that that's a 6-inch water line in Brook Lane. And I'm sure there'll be some input from the town officials about that 6-inch line. We are showing, right now we're showing that as being connected to that 6-inch line. That would loop back in, obviously, the same connection we had to Burns Ave, but as of today, this plan doesn't reflect the changes in Burns Ave that the town has made. There's been an installation of an 8-inch water line in Burns Ave, which extends down to about, I think it's right about where the public way ends, right around this, where it says Gay Ave, this driveway right here. The water line stubbed right to that point. So we would pick it up from there and bring it down into the project. We just haven't reflected those as-built plans the town just provided. Had given me those, and I haven't updated these plans to show those conditions. As far as the drainage goes, from an overall standpoint, it's primarily the same system that we had for the other project, with some small minor modifications to that. The open drainage basin is still in the back of the buildings here, as you see behind buildings. What is it? I can't read my numbers. It looks like 6, 7, and 8. We're calling it on this plan. There's some recharge system behind buildings 6 and 7. We are in the process of going through the Conservation Commission for this project, for this change. We did make some changes as a result of comments through the hearing process with them. Those are reflected on what's shown on my screen. I'm not sure if they're reflected on the plans in your filing. So on the plan on my screen, we show some additional recharge area up between units 34 and 35. And that was just an add-on just to add more recharge to the site. It wasn't necessary to take care of the increase in flows. It came up as a comment. Town engineer brought it up. Saw an area there that we could put in more recharges and asked that we do that, so we did it. And then as this road slopes, this is a high point in the project site, which is up around that recharge area in between buildings 3, 2, and 7. That's the high point, flows back towards Burns Ave, and then it flows down towards Brook Lane, the steeper side going towards Brook Lane. So these last set of catch basins going towards Brook Lane pick up some runoff off of the proposed road and then discharge it. And what we put in here is a small infiltration system and discharge it to a swale, which connects up with the outfall from the drainage basin. So that's how the drainage system is working throughout the site. The roof runoff is collected through downspouts. It gets into this recharge system. Some of it goes into this new recharge system. Some of it was into the old recharge system. Then just some changes to the how this whole thing operates. The town engineer was concerned, and in the old design, we had the water coming into the system through a treatment unit, which we still do before it goes into the recharge system. And that was on both ends of the site. So one coming in off Burns Ave, we had a treatment unit, and then one coming in off the proposed road, we had a treatment unit, and it fed both ends of this long recharge system. And then it overflowed in the larger storms and went out to the drainage basin in the middle. There was some concern that the larger storms, when they take place, as the peak of the storm builds up and the flows get quite heavy, that the flow would surcharge in the recharge system. The recharge system was primarily put in to help with the cooling of the water before it discharges out to the resource area. So what we really are trying to do with that recharge system is capture the first flush of the storm, which is anything sitting on the pavement and the roof runoff, because that first flush is going to be the warmest, is going to have the warmest water that discharges to the drainage system. So we've designed these 2 manholes, one on each end, and what we've done is we've just done a bypass to the basin. So the smaller storms, when it first starts raining, will go into the recharge system, and as that fills up and gets to its maximum, then it will, rather than bypass through the overflow pipe, which it can do also, they're there for emergency overflow, but it will bypass prior to that. So the larger storm will go into the basin and do that, and the mitigation would happen in the basin. But those are just some small things that we've made changes as a result of the conversations we've had with the town engineer, the Conservation Commission, and then the Ponset Watershed people who have been at all the meetings with the Conservation Commission as well. We've had dialogue with them as well, as far as the runoff goes, trying to provide cooling and all that. So that's pretty much an overview. As he said, there's now 40 units. There was 32 on the previous plan. This building, as you asked, at Burns Ave is primarily in the same location. I will say that this road has shifted slightly. It's more parallel to the Gay Ave Road, just to provide a smooth transition through the site. And that's pretty much the changes overall. I can't think of anything else at this point, but I'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Truax. I see that we have Town Engineer Carl Baldoff with us. And we've received a letter from you, Carl, I think, on this, and I expect we'll have more discussion back and forth. Do you have any comments that you want to make this evening for this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carl Baldoff, Town Engineer with the Department of Public Works. We haven't provided the board with correspondence. We may have copied the board with some of our review of the Conservation Commission. However, I'd just like to state that I agree with the summary by the applicant and Mr. Truax are very accurate. We agree with everything that they've said, and there have been some changes that we wanted on the drainage system, as Mr. Truax explained, under Conservation Commission review. We've also discussed a few other items, trying to refine the improvements along Burns Ave, which was part of the approval of the first project, and also as well as looking at some things in Brook Lane. We will furnish correspondence for the board, but I will just say that the configuration of the site drive with Brook Lane, as it's currently shown, probably will not gain our recommendation. It actually shows the elimination of the pavement in the cul-de-sac, which creates various problems for municipal vehicles plowing and turning around and that sort of thing. So those are things that need to be worked on, and we are concerned with the water main in Brook Lane, et cetera. But I agree, Mr. Truax has done an excellent job summarizing the changes.
Okay, thank you. One thing on that cul-de-sac, I see what you're saying, how the applicant shows the cul-de-sac disappearing. That's an accepted way. Is that something that the applicant can do?
Well, I agree, Mr. Chairman, that is an accepted way. I guess I'm being a bit delicate in our lack of preference for that cul-de-sac being eliminated. As you know, public accepted ways are under the care of the Board of Selectmen. So, in this venue, I think on a 40B application, you're going to act in their stead as far as what can happen in the public way. But it certainly doesn't fly very well with us right now. So there's a couple of different options with that, and one of them may be leaving it exactly the way it is, but tying the site drive into it.
Okay, thank you. Ashley, yes.
Yeah, just on that, we will be seeking a recommendation from the select board as the road commissioners on that. Because it is a 40B application, as Carl said, you do get to sit as that board. However, their input and any conditions that they would recommend will be sought.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Petrosi, do you have your traffic engineer with you?
Yes. Just before we go to traffic, could I just wanted to have two quick questions. Mr. Truax, you mentioned that the surcharging and the additional, or the sort of a smaller storm would be handled in the new infiltration units, but that a larger storm would result in the surcharge to the detention basin. What's the frequency of storm that would result in this surcharge? Do you know? Is it like a 5-year storm, 10-year storm?
No, well, a 2-year storm is 3.2 inches of rainfall. So it would be something smaller than that. It's like we look at it as like a 1 year, like a 2-inch storm. So the first, we really try to get the first 1 inch of water over the surface. After that, the water we feel is cooled, the surfaces have cooled down. That's really what we look for. So it's usually around the 1 inch storm that we want to get that first flush into that system.
Okay. And then just in terms of the general layout, that with the 8 additional units, I don't know if you can share your screen again, but could you show sort of just in general terms where those units are, or how they've been accommodated on the site as compared to the original configuration of the building?
How would I do that?
Well, I'm just wondering,
so I think,
some of the buildings.
Let me see what I can do. So,
okay.
So the road came in off of Burns. That's pretty similar. But building number 3, which is right here, you can see my hand circling around, correct?
Yes.
Can you see that on the screen? All right. This is where the cul-de-sac was, right where this rock is. So the cul-de-sac was here, and then we didn't have any buildings on that side. We came down this side with a couple buildings, and then we went around the cul-de-sac on this side here. Now, if you can't see it, but the house that we're buying comes in about, this property line would be right about here. It comes through like that. I can probably, if I pull up, would it help to pull up the existing conditions for you, Bob?
Sure, that would be great.
Let me see if I can find the existing. I have them all here. I just need to pick the right one.
So like the number of buildings more or less than last time, or are they just units added to the same number of buildings as they were previously?
I think we have one extra building. Then we have, I believe we had 6 buildings in the previous plan, and now we have 7. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We had 6, and now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we actually have 8 buildings now. Is that correct, Lou? Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't looked at haven't compared the two in some time.
don't remember.
I think just for my own edification and probably for the board and others too, it just might be nice to, I don't know if you can bring up, not right now, but the prior layout, and so we can kind of see it in comparison to the current.
Let me, what I'll do is while the traffic engineer is speaking on his, I'll look for it through my file. I have the whole file right here. I just have so many drawings and it'll take me a minute to find it. You want to let him speak and then we can pull it up after? Would that help?
Yeah.
Or you want me to look now while we wait?
No, let's do that. Let's keep this.
I have it if you want me to pull it up.
Oh, that would be great, actually. Sure. I'll stop sharing.
So you wanted to see the old layout?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense for, you know, the sort of how the site plan itself has changed, not just that there's 8 more units, but it looks like there are 2 additional buildings. I'm just trying to get a better sense of the changes.
These parking spaces have been removed in the new layout.
Okay, that's helpful for me. Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate it.
Okay. Traffic. So we have the traffic engineer. If you would introduce yourself and explain your findings.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
All right, and you can see the screen?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Bill Scully with Green International. We were the traffic consultant on the project, starting with the original studies and approval. We were requested to review the proposed modification in relation to the currently approved project, and we looked at the change in trip generation for the modification, as well as with the new connection out to Brook Lane, the visibility at the existing intersection of Brook Lane with Union Street. We prepared a brief letter, and that was submitted to the town earlier this week that summarizes that information. And I'll go through just some highlights. Just again, I mean, everyone is pretty familiar with the location. The red dot signifies the actual project location. The 2 yellow lines are the existing Burns Ave and Brook Lane. And I just illustrated then with the red lines to be some connection from the development out to both of them. Since, I mean, we've studied Burns Ave and Pleasant Street and Pleasant at Union. I think even originally way back in 2016, we had studied Union Street with a different access configuration as well. But I thought I'd just highlight these 2 streets since the other ones have been sort of examined in pretty much a good amount of detail. Union Street, 2-lane collector roadway in the project area. Is pretty straight and level. Posted speed limit is 35 miles per hour out there. It's about 1,100 feet from Pleasant Street, about 1,500 feet from Route 1. There's a sidewalk on the south side of Union Street that reaches from Brook Lane down to Pleasant Street. And Brook Lane is 22 feet in width. It has a sidewalk on the east side. A little bit of separation. Union Street, the sidewalk's separated probably by about 4 feet with a grass strip. You know, Brook Lane, it's smaller than that. It's probably 1 to 2 feet with a berm on Brook Lane. It's about 250 feet long or so, ends in a cul-de-sac, as you know, with 4 homes currently served directly with it. In the letter, we have compared the resulting development. So there's 8 additional units resulting in 40 units, multi-family type design. Originally, the analysis was done for 36, but in this new letter, I've summarized the approved 32 number of units. And in the end, the change in peak hour traffic generation by the modification is what you see on the screen here. In total, the peak hour traffic generation will increase by 4 vehicle trips in the morning, most of that exiting, and it's split in the afternoon. We use the same ITE models as we did in the original study, and the calculation sheets are in the appendix of the letter as well. So you can see it's a fairly small increase in the number of trips and resulting traffic flow changes in the area due to the modification. With the second point of access, obviously there'll be some shift of development traffic from Burns Ave, where it was all coming out previously. Some of that's obviously going to now shift to Brook Lane. The overall trip distribution pattern in the area remains the same as in the original study. So about 30% of the traffic we had predicted to go to and from Union Street to the east, about 20% to and from the south on Pleasant Street, and the rest either up north on Pleasant or to the west on Union. So by the time you get past the development, past Burns, past Brook Lane, all the traffic, the resulting increases are in patterns are the same, with the addition of those 4 additional peak hour trips as a result of the modification. Visibility at Brook Lane and Union Street, we've got well over 500 feet in all directions. As I mentioned, it's pretty straight, pretty level. With the sidewalk over there too, it keeps things clear around the corner. Let's see, what else did I say? In relation, I think it's been already talked about between Lou or Rob and Carl, with the second point of access, it certainly makes the extension a benefit for the emergency response, more convenient. They can come in from 2 different ways depending on where they're coming from, and they don't have to worry so much about the turnaround. Although the turnaround did accommodate, we showed the accommodation, but this makes it certainly more convenient and some potential benefit. That second point of access also provides some benefit to the existing neighborhoods. So those living on Burns Ave wanting to get to Route 1, out Union, potentially would be able to use the extension. Those living on Brook Lane wanting to go towards the center or south on Pleasant can potentially use the extension and make a different connection. We did in the letter talk about some potential actions. So clearly with the extension, you have that through way. And we know that, there's going to be some people who think that instead of going up to the Pleasant and Union intersection and stopping and making a right turn onto Union, now they have an opportunity to come through the neighborhood. Our preliminary look at that, if you look at the travel distance between Walcott to the south and Route 1 to the east, that movement, it ends up being just about the same distance, whether you go down to the Pleasant Union intersection and then take a right or come through the neighborhood, because the extension is a very curved section of road. So in terms of distance, there's not a lot of advantage in terms of general travel time that someone would gain by that. Obviously, during the morning peak, where the delays on the Pleasant Street approach to Union would be a little bit higher. So you might have some greater potential there. My own opinion is, after you try it once or twice, you really start to see not any real advantage. That said, we've talked about some potential actions to either discourage that movement or, more importantly, just maintain safe, slow movement through the neighborhood. Signed control and markings on the Brook Lane approach, which operates right now as a stop anyways, but there's no marking or sign up there. On the Development Street approaching Burns Ave, where you have that hard right turn, we're recommending a stop control, stop sign, and marking on that. Again, it just forces someone who wants to go through that neighborhood, or maybe living on Burns Ave and uses the neighborhood just to drive slow, stop, and before they make the movement. Install some type of signage within the neighborhood of slow traffic, thickly settled with advisory plate. I didn't come up with the exact type of legend for the signage, but at this stage, but it would be something on that sort of tenor to encourage whoever's in there. And a lot of times it's just the people who are living on the streets, just to maintain a slow speed and be aware that there could be walkers out there, etc. A couple of other things that we've talked about is potentially modify the crosswalk at the Brook Lane Union Street intersection, maybe making it a raised crosswalk, certainly with whatever, whether it's raised or not, making sure the roundings are and the ramps are ADA compliant. But the raised, again, between that one and then the last bullet, I mentioned potentially a speed hump on the Development Street, strategically located. So again, you're placing traffic calming devices that if people are going to travel through the neighborhood, or people living in this whole neighborhood go through it, they're going to travel slower, or may discourage them and keep them on the main streets, Pleasant Street and Union Street. And the other thing I mentioned in the letter report is, obviously it's for that type of action, it's something that can be monitored once the development is up there and you're seeing how things are going. There's other actions that can be taken if it does become a problem. There's plenty of places that have peak period turn restrictions that are placed in their ordinances so that they can be enforced. That's something that could be done on both ends of this neighborhood street. So I think that's all I have at this point. It wasn't a full traffic impact study. It's 8 units, so it's a small increase. And in fact, if you take the single family house out that's on Brook Lane today, there's going to be one less. So instead of serving 4, you're serving 3 single family homes, plus the new 8 units of housing. And I'll end there. Be happy to answer any questions I can at this point.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Scully. Do board members have any questions on traffic? Okay. I have a couple. Oh,
no, go ahead.
Oh, do you need that back up?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Scully, you said for peak hour there'll be 4 additional trips. That's on top of how many from the 36 units that were already approved?
All right, so the 30, I don't have the 36 units. That was,
sorry, 32.
I can look that up.
No.
In our letter report. So what I did was, I did provide a summary of 32 units. So we made an updated calculation. So at 32 units, the weekday AM peak hour is estimated to generate 16 vehicle trips. Most of them, again, leaving the site. And that would become 20 with the modification. And then the PM peak hour, the estimate for 32 units is 19. And with the added 8 units, it goes to 23.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Also, would this be a town accepted road, or Mr. Petrosi, do you want to comment on that, or?
We still plan on having it as a private homeowners association maintained roadway. So no town expenditures or services on this roadway, privately maintained.
Okay, so somebody would be driving along Burns Ave on a public road, go on to Petrosi Drive, which is now, I guess, private or whatever it is, and then out to back onto a town road. Is that how you envision this?
That's the way we've got it proposed, yes.
Okay. And Mr. Scully, I think a lot of the things that you had there were things that we would put into conditions, such as the signs, all those things. I think that makes sense. So thank you. Okay, board members, Bob, go ahead.
Just a question initially on, do you have a sense for the distribution of traffic coming out of the development, like the percentage that's going to go out Brook Lane to Union versus out Burns and up to, in that direction?
A little bit very preliminary, but here's what I would essentially say is that in the development itself, if they're going out to Route 1, they're going to go out Brook Lane and come back in. Anything coming from Route 1 would utilize Brook Lane. So that's, in the original analysis, we've estimated 30% of the development traffic going to and from that direction. We had 20% to and from the south, Pleasant Street. So I would say anyone living in the development then is going to use Burns Ave to reach that point. For the remaining traffic, either heading north on Pleasant Street or going west on Union Street, it's going to really come down more to where am I living within the development. If I'm really close to the Burns Ave side, then I'm more likely to head out Burns Ave, take a right turn, and then go to the intersection and make your move. If I'm living close to Brook Lane, then you're going to go that other direction. And I mean, really ballpark, you could say that splits about 50-50 in very rough terms. I haven't really looked at it closely, but if you look at the way the new project is laid out, it's probably, on average, would be 50-50. You don't know who is living where and, exactly where they're going. But from a planning point of view, I think you could say 50-50. So that would end up being about, split 55% is going in those directions. So half of that number would go use Brook Lane and make a left turn, or use Burns Ave and make a right turn.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other board members with some questions or comments?
With, excuse me, Chairman, with no proposed general parking or overflow parking, how will on-street parking affect the traffic flow of this new proposed development?
Is that a question for me or?
Yeah, has that been taken into consideration of your traffic study?
No, not specifically. Right now they have 2 spaces per unit, counting the garage and the driveway space, I believe. And I don't think anyone has, Lou, maybe you can
Mr. Chairman,
clarify. I don't think we've said no parking on the street or parking on the street.
So, Bill, what I would say, Mr. Chairman, is that we understand that the board had a desire for some additional parking spaces. We're still looking into the into providing some additional parking within the site. We're getting through presenting these modifications tonight for the first time. So we're working on that possibility.
Okay, and that really brings up a good point, that this is the first time for this plan to be shown. I believe we have a number of people in the audience. Yes, Ashley, go ahead.
Just when we get to that point, I have a visual that I would like to show the board of the project, kind of comparing the previous one to this one.
I actually think now would be the time to do that. That would be helpful.
Okay, so what I have up here is the existing condition site plan. And so what I've done is I've overlaid the proposed, just so that you can kind of get a sense of what is there now and what is being proposed. But I think more interesting is when you overlay the previous project with the proposed site plan. So I can go back and forth to this a few times if you'd like.
It's pretty cool.
So I'll just fade this one out, and then you can see the new development appear. What you'll notice is those parking spaces over here are being removed. Those were, I think, a pretty important part of your discussion during the last go round. And of a particular change that I would like to point out that I think needs to be addressed is this rear yard setback line is being altered pretty dramatically. So when I fast forward, you can see that that building is now very close to that property line, whereas previously we had a pretty good distance, at least here. Let's see. When I go back this way, so then you can kind of see previously the cul-de-sac was here, and our original buildings were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now we've got 3, 6, we have 8 buildings with the duplexes. And then something that came up that I talked with Carl, our town engineer, about was what happens with our snow plow that normally comes down here and turns around and goes out. So that's just another thing I want to point out that we'll need to sort out. So I can kind of go back and forth between this, however much you'd like. I just wanted to show this to you all.
Yeah, actually, that's really helpful. Wow, what a great technology there.
Microsoft Word.
Yeah, really. Wow. So
it is 6 buildings versus 8, actually, not 5 versus 8.
Yes, that's right. Sorry, 5.
So yeah. So like you said, Mr. Petrosi, yes, it's 6. The original one was 6. Now we're to 8. And some other thing, this is, we spent a lot of time talking about the setbacks on some of these, including big discussion about decks and all that. And now I see it's moved closer to the property line on this paper street called Gay Ave. So, okay. So that's helpful, Ashley. George, any comments from you as far as how we need to proceed, or I think we're going to be looking for peer review on for engineering and traffic on this modification. George, what's your thoughts on what's next for the zoning board?
Yeah, I would maybe start to get into that discussion tonight, and then maybe Ashley can work on that with the applicant on your direction of what you're looking at for peer review. And maybe tee that up for the next hearing session.
Yeah,
identify anything else maybe you want to hear from Lou, that was mentioned tonight. You're also going to want to obviously provide some time for public comment. I imagine you have you have other participants tonight viewing in, and they should know they're going to have a chance to be heard in this format. This is a public hearing like as though it's a new application, but it's, limited to the changes to the project. But you're conducting it the way you're conducting a ordinary public hearing on a 40B that's coming before you for the first time. It's only you're focusing on all these issues that are on the project change.
And that's a good point, because it's not just the new acquisition of the property and like 2 new buildings going in. It's reconfiguring the entire project. So we're going to be looking at everything, including the parking that disappeared and things like that. So we are not just looking at what somebody might say is being added on. We're looking at the whole project, because the whole project's been changed.
Yeah, it's not like changing it, from single family to duplexes, and it's a different site configuration. And really, you're a big ticket item for 40B is your site design review. That's really where the rubber meets the road for you, what you're looking at here. So yeah, it's quite a different project than the original one before you. But I think it's well described tonight, and so hopefully, you have a good head start on this. You'll want to proceed. My only recommendation would be to proceed as expeditiously as you can, under these difficult circumstances, because we'll run out of time. As we'll come up on the deadline. Will be upon us before you know it, in terms of reaching your decision on this.
So Chairman Lee, what I would suggest is we can get scopes for peer review, and I'd like to get those approved as soon as possible so that we can get that going. Our next hearing is November the 30th. We could assuming we can get a scope of work by then, we can put this as basically just an item for the board to approve. I would also ask the board to consider working groups so that we can kind of work on some of the issues that you address in between hearings, so we can kind of expedite review.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Petro.
Our preference, obviously, we had Beta review the project initially. We would expect that the board would continue with Beta as the peer reviewer for this project, rather than introduce a whole new set of eyes to this project.
Town Council recommended Tetra Tech, Sean Reardon, who we're working with.
But I'm not. And we're going to insist on Beta reviewing the project.
With all due respect, I believe it's within the board's purview to select their peer reviewer.
Let's just go back to the Housing Appeals Committee then and let them decide. Well, I'm not going to introduce another peer reviewer to the project after we spent a year and a half reviewing it with Beta. And it's not appropriate for the board to introduce another peer reviewer to the project.
So, Mr. Petrosi, it's the zoning board that chooses who's going to do the peer review, and that's the way it works.
I understand, but that's not necessarily the way it works. In the interest of fairness, if that's what we're trying to do here, in the interest of fairness, we spent a sizable amount of money at the board's request to have a peer review conducted by Beta. We have a similar project with some project changes that should also be reviewed by Beta, as if it were a project change or a revision to the plan that would have taken place during the hearing process. Okay. Why do you think it would be fair to use another peer reviewer?
I haven't said we're going to have another peer reviewer, but what I am saying is whoever does it is going to be selected by the zoning board, and that's the way it works. I am not saying that it's not going to be Beta, but I'm saying we're going to look at other ones, and we've been working with Tetra Tech and other companies recently, so we'll put it out and see what it's going to be for the cost on doing this. So, Ashley, can you come up with a scope of work for the peer reviews?
Yeah, and I'll reach out to both Tetra Tech and Beta if that's what the board would like.
Yeah, that's fine. We can do that. And So also, so traffic review, what's the thoughts on that? I think that this totally changes because it's going out to Union Street, and I think that it does require a look at the traffic. So I think we should have a traffic peer review also on that. Ashley, can you put that together?
Sure.
Board members, anything else that you want addressed this evening?
I mean,
John,
go ahead, Drew.
I was just curious about site control. I know that was the first question we asked the applicant when they had the original permit. And I didn't know if that was necessary for this additional parcel of land that is included in the application, or if he's already proven that.
So in order to get approval through mass housing, an applicant needs to demonstrate site control. And site control and that lies within the subsidizing agency's purview.
And that was submitted to the board as part of the original application for modification.
Okay. Anything else from board members?
I do.
Go ahead, Suzanne.
Peer review wetlands too. This is Trap Hole Brook, Pickerel Brook.
We're in front of the Conservation Commission. We've already received the superseding order of conditions from DEP, and we've presently reviewing the modification with Conservation Commission. I don't think you really need to have peer review from any more professionals than are at the DEP and the Conservation Commission.
Oops. As we all know,
broke up.
You know, DEP is looking at the state rules and regulations. So,
how many times do we have to have this reviewed? We've only been in front of the board for three and a half years.
There's a whole different street involved now.
okay. So Ashley, if you would, for our next meeting, which will be on, did you say November 30th?
That's the next one we have. So if the board wants, we can plug approval of those onto the agenda.
Yes, would you put that on, please?
Just one, I don't think this has to be necessarily a peer review, but just my initial impressions of the plan is that that it's really tight, and doesn't appear to be any open space or any sort of outdoor amenities for any of the residents, whether they're market or affordable. So it's just a comment. I don't have a proposal or solution or anything like that, but it just strikes me that the addition of the 2 additional buildings kind of gobbled up a lot of what could have been some sort of open space that would have been available. So it's just a comment and an observation, really nothing more than that.
Well, I would say that we are there's 32,000 square feet of unused riverfront area that is going to be available for recreational purposes for any of the homeowners. So there's a significant amount of open space that's provided on the plan. It's just not in the locations between the buildings, in a central location.
So I think it might be helpful if you wanted to provide how you plan on programming that space or how that space will be accessible to the residents that live there.
It's all within the Conservation Commission controls that decision, not us. It's open land for walking and nature walks, not open for open recreation purposes.
Okay. So at this point, I think we see where we want to go. There's going to be some reviews on this. We'll get comments from town boards and go forward on that. I believe if we do have people from the public out there, and they've been with us all night. I would like to open it up and just see if anybody has some comment. They'll have other chances to comment, but Ashley, can you see if there's anybody that wants to comment from the public on this?
Sure. So if the public would like to comment, if you could select the raise your hand feature, and then I will call on you as I see hands come up. Alternatively, you can write your name in the chat, and I'll see your name there. So we do have one hand raised. It's Cheryl Hayes Montville. Cheryl, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm the homeowner at the end of the street on 8 Brook Lane. And I've been talking with Lou quite a bit about the proposed project. My biggest concern, clearly, is the traffic and how that's going to impact everybody on Brook Lane. My biggest concern is that regardless of what anyone tells me, everybody is going to use Brook Lane to Burns Ave to get to Pleasant Street. It's going to be a cut through. It is going to be a major highway. And literally right now we have 3 other houses, you know, with multiple cars. We have 4 cars that come down the street every day thinking that it's a cut through and turn around, and, you know, some delivery trucks. If the town or Lou and the town doesn't do something to prevent that, that is a huge impact to a street that has 3 houses on it. 30% is a huge impact. I respect the fact that he has his project. I respect the fact that he's going to do, you know, all the things that he's going to do. But when a car comes zooming down the street and ends up in my front lawn, I'm going to have an issue with it. So there's nothing good or positive, like, in that respect. And I think the traffic alone is, like, our major concern. And, you know, the stormwater is a concern because my house sits at the lowest level, and I know that they've done a lot of mitigation. And I also know that there was talk about, you know, the cul-de-sac. So we're going to have fire trucks and ambulances and delivery trucks and everybody turn around right in front of my house. That's a major impact.
So, and that's why we're having the public hearing. You know, this is the first night it's been explained what's being proposed, and there's still a ways to go to make sure your concerns are addressed on this. So I appreciate your comments tonight, but there'll be more work on this. Okay.
Okay, and Scott Margerer, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thanks. Thank you, members of the board. I'm Scott Magerer. I live at 6 Brook Lane. My family moved here about a year ago, so we are fairly new to this process, so I thought I'd take the opportunity to introduce myself and also say that I share Cheryl's concerns about the traffic patterns. Really, I have a 5-year-old son who has gotten used to living on a cul-de-sac, and that's my primary concern, is cars flying down the street. So we'd really like to see the board take the safety precautions to heart and put in not just signage, but physical encouragement for people to slow down and be careful on the street, because one accident is too many in a residential neighborhood. So that's something that we'd really just like the board to prioritize. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay, Kathy Campbell.
Thank you, Ashley. Mr. Chairman, I would just like to say that I did submit a letter on November 15th, which I believe the board has a copy of. And as everyone is aware, it is the, it is the access coming out of Burns Avenue where we're still speaking about, and I call the board's attention to the November 25th memo from Mr. George Pucci's office, where the prior project had not been sort of satisfied that site control and right of way on that side. So I think we're still faced with, we're definitely faced with that issue as well on this project. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathy, for your comments also. And yep. Okay, anybody else?
I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. So we're going to continue this hearing until November 30th, and at which time we will be discussing peer review for the projects.
At 7 p.m.
7 p.m. Yeah. Okay. Could it, let's see, George, do we need to have a motion to continue? It's getting late. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, could I have a motion to continue until 7 p.m. on November 30th?
So moved.
Moved by Suzanne, second by Jane. Okay, roll call vote. First, any further discussion on that? Can board members make that? That was one of the dates that worked for people. Okay, Suzanne Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Jane Coffey. Bob Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Drew Delaney.
Aye.
Dave Anderson.
Aye.
And I'm John Lee, aye. Okay, so this is continued until November 30th at 7 p.m. Okay, now we have the other project up the street, and this was for neighbors' comments. This is for Dupy Street, and this is case number 0520 Wall Street Development Corporation, Dupy Street, comprehensive permit, chapter 40B, to allow construction of 12 duplex condominiums in 6 buildings. And the purpose of tonight's meeting is to have comments from the public. So, Ashley, do we have anybody there that wants to comment? I know it's been a long night for people, so I hope we didn't lose people.
So folks are starting to raise their hand. So the first hand is Janice Sellett.
Hi. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, Janice.
Okay, thank you all. I know it's getting late. I'll be brief because I wasn't able to get off the website from the October 28th, the letters that were discussed on the October, no, what was it? There was some other meeting we had, I think October 27th, 8th. Anyway, one of the things that I'm really concerned about with the number of units, I know I keep bringing it up, but when you think about it, what they're trying to put in a little over an acre of land is equivalent to the number of homes that I believe are on Victoria Circle, which are, well, it's more than the homes that are on Victoria Circle and Hummingbird Lane. I know Hummingbird Lane has 13, and I think Victoria Circle has 13. So that's a lot of families to try to put back there, aside from all the other issues that are involved between the snow and the traffic, which is another sore spot. But I'm also concerned about with the soil not being able to handle the kind of development that is being proposed. You know, ideally, as I said, if we know if the land was configured a little bit differently, you would put no more than one home there. Even one duplex, to me, would be more than what should be put there. You know, it's just unconscionable. I know that they're doing now another traffic study that they just hooked up yesterday. And it still is not real because we're still in COVID. So it's not going to tell you what's really going to happen when the time comes that they want, you know, the number of buildings and the homes, and you don't know how many vehicles and the delivery vehicles and emergency vehicles and people visiting. So there's an awful lot still that I'm really concerned about. I have not seen any updated project plans as to what the number of units are and the configuration of them. And as well as the more important things too, well, not more, but one of the most important things is, again, the water runoff. And it affects Summit Ave, Dupy Street, High Plain, Victoria Circle. You know, it's just an awful lot. And I just don't see any solutions yet that are seeing that they're good. You know, it's like they want to come and destroy a neighborhood, and then we are left with damage. You know, the soil is going to, you know, get ruined. Your lawns are going to become very soft from all the construction and the extra water that's going to be added. So anyway, that's what I'm really concerned about, that. And, you know, so like I said, if you can put a visual to how many families, if you're taking from more than what's in, or just about what's in 2 streets right around us and stuffing it into 1 little acre of land, that's unconscionable. So, but I wish I could see those other reports. I just wasn't able to get them off the website. I couldn't locate them. So I don't know where we go from here as to how we can, you know, intelligently discuss a reduction, because it's all well and good for things to be on paper, as we know, but the reality is who's left living with it. I don't think Mr. Petrosi or anyone else wants to go and live in that little spot of land, but he seems to want to just go and find every little piece he can and then think that it's going to be fine for everybody. I'm not opposed to new neighbors, not at all, but not like what I think it was Carl Snuffer who said the last time, oh, micro neighborhood. No, it doesn't work back there. That's to do to people. And, you know, I don't foresee anyone wanting to stuff themselves into a little piece of land. So anyway, I've talked too long. It's late. You've had a long night, and I appreciate your kindness. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you. And for everybody else, the best way to submit something to the board is to do it in writing. We'd love to have your comments for the record. Obviously, this is also for the record, but in writing, it's also helpful. So Ashley, anybody else on this?
So I don't see any hands raised. I just want to note that, Janice, you can call our office and we'll try and help you find whatever you're looking for. Just to be clear, we've not received revised plans for this project yet. And I think this hearing might be a good opportunity to get an update from Lou on kind of his response to the letters that he's received from the peer reviewers outlining additional materials and information that would be helpful for the board to review this project.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you know, as we understand it, the hearing for this project was continued until December 2nd, as I understand it. And so we are in the process of reviewing and making comments to the peer reviewers, particularly the Tetra Tech engineering peer review. And we've also met with the town engineer today to go over a few other parameters that he would like to see us do. So we're in the process of preparing a response to the comments made by Tetra Tech. And we hope to have those available next week so that they'd be able to be reviewed prior to the December 2nd meeting.
And if I could just add, if it would be helpful as we're going through that to schedule a work session or a call, we'd be happy to coordinate that.
I don't think at this point a work session is necessary. We're responding to the comments that we know that we can respond to. We've talked about possible other issues related to drainage. It's basically, if we can revise the plan to address the comments, there's no need for a work session. If we can't revise the plans to address the comments, then we'll sit down and we'll have a conversation about what the alternatives would be. But at this point, we think we're in the good spot reviewing and addressing those comments, and we'll present the revised plans when we, hopefully next week.
Okay, Ashley, anybody else that's trying to make a comment? And believe me, I think it's important that people submit things in writing if that's the best way to do it. And I did look at it, and you are correct, Janice. Victoria Circle has 13 homes on the entire street. I just looked it up. So,
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one question, since we are in this process, and I guess this is more of a question for town council. not so much that I want to.
You'll ask me, and then I'll.
Yeah, I'll ask you, so you can ask him, you're paying him. How are we evaluating this, 180-day timeline that typically is employed under the 40B process? I know we're in a difficult set of circumstances, but do we have a process under which we're going to have a starting point and an end point to the 180 days? Has that been decided anywhere?
Town council, I don't know whether you want to answer that for the applicants. I know I have an interpretation as far as what the time frame is, but you can say whatever you want.
I can opine on your interpretation. What is your interpretation, John?
My interpretation is that as of December 2nd, the clock starts ticking again, where it's been stayed this entire time. So that's my understanding. Yeah, where do we stand, George?
Yeah, mine is substantially the same. I would start running it on December 1, not the date of your continued hearing. And the reason I say that, the amendment to the legislation substituted a provision for the prior subparagraph 4 of the prior statute. And basically it had it added a tolling provision for the time lost during the state of emergency. The state of emergency is still in effect, but what the amended legislation did was, instead of tying the end of the stay period to 45 days following termination of the state of emergency, just put a cutoff date of December 1. So there's a provision in the subparagraph 4. And when I say subparagraph 4, I'm talking about your original statute was Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020, and that was the emergency legislation that you've been going under. So that had section 17B4, and 4 is a small I, small v in a paren. And what the legislature did was they substituted a new section 4 for that prior provision. And it says when a statute, et cetera, and this would be a regulation, the regulation provides for the 6-month, 180-day period. So when by a statute, ordinance, bylaw, rule, or regulation, when that provides that a permit shall be considered granted, approved, or denied constructively or otherwise due to a failure of the permit granting authority to act within a specified time period, the time within which the permit granting authority must act shall be tolled from March 10, 2020 to December 1, 2020. So the way I would interpret that is consistent with what you're saying, is, except for December 2, I would just put it back to December 1. I would then start the clock because it's tolled. I would start that 6-month clock on December 1. So that's how it is. And having said that, though, it would be very good for us all to be on the same page with the applicant. There's no reason to get into a dispute about, if he thinks that's not correct and he thinks it should be shorter, whatever. Whatever it is, we should just confirm, get a meeting of the minds as to if the applicant agrees with our interpretation, run it December 1. If he disagrees, we're happy to discuss it further with either Kim and Ashley or with his counsel, whoever, and come up with a date. But let's just make sure that we all are on the same page as to what the date certain will be on that. So if we have to do it either by Lou agreeing with our interpretation under the statute, then you don't need a written extension. It operates by law. if we reach some other type of accommodation with the applicant, then let's do it by a formal written extension that gets filed with the town clerk. But let's, you know, I would recommend strongly, you know, let's try to reach agreement, you know, as to what we're talking about with the applicant. So,
and Mr. Chairman, I have no objections at this point to the way we're proceeding, but it would seem to me that we're, you know, far enough along in the process when we present our revisions and our comments from the peer reviewer that we're going to be pretty far along in this process over the next 30 to 60 days, that it would not take the board 180 days from December 1st or 2nd to render a decision. All we're asking for is a fair treatment, given the size of the project, and despite the objections of the neighbors, we're going to try and, you know, address their concerns. But it wouldn't seem to me that we would need, at this point, since all of the meetings that we've had, it doesn't seem to me that we would need, or the board would need 180 days from December 1st to render a decision. So I just would express my willingness to cooperate with the board and hope that the board treats us in a fair manner when and if the time comes that all the facts have been presented.
No, that sounds good, and the fact that you want to, you know, work with the board is great, and I think we'll see what you come back with a plan on December 2nd. And we'll
December
take a look.
1st it starts, and December 2nd is.
The hearing is December 2nd.
Yes.
Right. Yes, December 2nd. So yeah, believe me, you see our agenda. I'm not trying to drag this out. That's not something that we want to do. We want to get, but we also want to make sure that everything's done correctly and in a timely manner. So.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Board members, George, Amy, Ashley, anything else?
Nope, I'm all set.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is, could I have a motion to continue this until December 2nd? And at which point, before then, we should have some revisions based on peer review comments, and we'll move from there. And the neighbors will be able to take a look at it. We'll take a look at it too beforehand.
Is that 7 p.m.? 7 p.m.
Yeah, Suzanne, yes.
Are we going to get the revisions before that date?
I hope to have them for you next week. So
Thank you.
Hopefully before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that 7 p.m., Mr. Chair?
Yes, 7 p.m.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Okay.
Is there a way of me getting the holiday cookies that I got last year? We were around that from the ladies. No, maybe not.
I'll bring some old dried up turkey in for you, George. There you go.
I'll bring them, George.
Oh, yes. Back when we used to meet in person. Yes. Okay.
So moved on that motion.
Moved by Suzanne, second by Jane. Okay. Any further discussion on continuing until December 2nd at 7 p.m.? Okay. Roll call vote. Suzanne Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Jane Coffey.
Aye.
Drew Delaney.
Aye.
Dave Anderson.
Aye.
Bob Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Okay, the case is, the hearing is continued. Okay, we also have some minutes to review.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, good night.
I'm gonna say good night too, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thanks, George.
Thank you very much.
Bye,
Good night.
George. Thank you. Have
Good
a good
night.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You
Have
too.
a nice Thanksgiving.
Thanks very much. You too.
Okay, we have the minutes from November 5th, and that was the was that Doopy Street? Did somebody I reviewed them when they came out, but I don't have them in front of me. We don't need to vote on these if people don't want it tonight.
No, I'm too tired.
Okay, we're not going to vote on those tonight. Okay, does anybody have anything else for the board? This was a lot longer than I thought. Sorry, folks, but we moved things along.
Covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we did. We did cover a lot of ground. Okay, could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Suzanne, second by Jane. Roll call vote to adjourn. Murphy.
Murphy with a big eye.
Coffee.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
And I'm John. Aye. Okay. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving for everybody.
Thanks, Ashley, and
Okay.
Amy, too, for your help.